culture, humor is a coping mechanism. So while my dad preferred a laughing exterior, I can assure you inside he was a deeply serious man. Dad was born with a sense of humor that was nurtured as he laid on the floor doing his grade school homework in front of a radio listening to the Jack Benny program or Amos and Andy. The radio was my dad's first gadget. He loved gadgets. And his whole life, and even at age 91, he was enjoying his iPod, and he Skyped me just a few weeks before he passed. His irreverent sense of humor was not always understood, even when he was young, which I guess I inherited that gene, but he told me how it sometimes met with Grandpa's Izzy's disapproval. I'll maybe tell you later some of the things Izzy would say to him. But you would think that a guy who did his homework in front of the radio every night would have some lackluster grades. But Dad graduated from New York City public schools at age 16. I think most Americans don't realize that in the 1940s there were quotas on how many Jews could attend Ivy League schools, like Harvard. And there was no telling where Dad's grades might have won him entry. But decades later, he had attended City College of New York. You may recognize that's Colin Powell's alma mater, with pride, and he graduated as a chemist only 3 years later. If you spent any time with my dad, you know he was an intelligent man. In fact, I used to think he was the smartest man alive. My dad did the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle in completion every Sunday, including the Sunday before he passed away. I grew up thinking he was the smartest man in the world, and I was so confident that I never bothered to use a dictionary when I was in school, and I would yell across the house when I was doing my homework and say, "Dad, how do you spell this?" And he, of course, would dutifully tell me, "Hey, look that up. You know, you need to learn how to look it up." And I said, "Why would I look it up when you already know how to spell it?" And he would, I think he enjoyed that, but he tried to discipline me about it just the same. Hal finally got into Harvard, by the way, the rest of the story. That's not all. He also attended Yale and MIT because the Air Force, after he enlisted, had come up with this new crew member position in the B-29. They had just invented it, and they weren't even sure what to call it. And he went to each of those schools to take electrical engineering courses because he was going to be one of the first, Air Force's first electronic warfare officers, or EWO. Later in SAC, EWOs got sort of a reputation for being oddballs, but nonetheless, my dad was one of the first. And an interesting story was that the wings they decided they would wear would be navigator wings. And the navigators, who were the legitimate, real navigators, really took exception to that and didn't like that at all. One in particular used to harass my dad about it. But fate would have it, eventually EWOs became an upgrade. In fact, the cream of the crop could be an EWO or a weapon systems operator. My brother-in-law Joe was a weapon system operator in the F-4. And that usually goes to the top of the class. So that really rubbed the navigators, the former navigators, the wrong way. And then at insult to injury, my dad got to take nav training by correspondence, and of course passed with flying colors. So, but he did go to those three Ivy League schools, and when I went to Harvard for an Air Force course for 1 year, and when he came back and we went through all his old haunts and got to hear some stories, some I didn't hear, but his college days. So, my father was defined largely by his sense of humor and his understanding of right and wrong. And he was a fiercely loyal man. He was loyal to his family, loyal to his friends, and loyal to the values that he learned from his parents. My father was never, in my experience, an overtly religious man, although there were a number of times in my life that I did hear him refer to God. One time was the day he pinched his finger trying to put a TV back together. He loved to take electronic things apart, and when he had it all back together, there were always parts left over. And most of the time the TV would work, but when I would ask my mother, why didn't it work, she said, "That's because your dad fixed it." Wherever my mom, sisters, and I went, we felt Dad's love for us. When we faced our biggest challenges in life, we drew strength from the certainty that he stood behind us. Hal's grandchildren knew their grandpa as a man certain of his mind and giant in his self-assuredness. My dad sympathized with their difficulties, he took pride in their triumphs, and he foresaw with absolute confidence the ultimate success of his grandchildren. Harold A. Feldman was the earth and rock and oak that we trusted to bear our weight when our own bone and muscle seemed unequal to the burden. This man of so few questions about himself leaves behind as his very best legacy a question that all who knew him and loved him will ask ourselves again and again. How can we be more like him? So as we say goodbye to my father and say all the things we love so much about him, I just want you to imagine him watching us on TV right now and picture him changing the channel to the business channel, because he would have never sat through this, and he would be checking the stock prices right now. The world is a better place because Hal Foundman lived in it for over 91 years. Thank you, Dad, for being the most incredible father I could have ever wanted. And thank you for making me want to make the world a better place, and for, along with Mom, showing me and my sisters a path to do so. Thank you for making sure that I have known I was loved every day of my life. We love you, Dad, and we'll miss you more than I can say. Thank you.